the time and space to give yourself a break. Here you'll find some love, music, laughter, and above all, she'll dare to tell the truth. And so come to Granny's place and give your spirit a big boost.
Welcome to Granny's Place, a haven for love, entertainment, and uncommon sense. I'm Sweet Baby James, and I'm here to introduce you to Granny Rocks and to today's ongoing theme, which is You Ask the Questions, Granny Provides the Answers. And now, here's Granny.
Hi, everyone. So happy to see you again. Our show is doing really well. People are coming. People are coming to Granny's Kitchen, and we're getting some wonderful questions.
Yeah.
Very deep questions. Now, there's no way on earth that I'll be able to answer all the questions today, but I'll do the best I can. And don't forget that the sooner you send your question in, the sooner I can answer it, because I always answer them in the order that they come in. So you just keep those questions coming.
Yes.
All right.
Are you ready for the first question?
I don't know. We'll have to find out.
Okay, then. This one's from Anonymous. I was raised Catholic, and even though I'm not religious, I still have warm feelings about the church, the ritual, and high points in my life, like my confirmation and my wedding. And I've taken my kids to church from time to time. The latest expose of sexual abuse has shaken me deeply. I feel like the church has lost all moral authority, and I can't even trust my good memories. I feel angry and betrayed, and don't want my kids anywhere near the church anymore. It's just very upsetting. Any suggestions, Granny?
Well, to begin with, I have a lot of empathy for you and for all the other people who are in that situation. So I'm very happy to answer this question. So let's go.
Can we start with the issue of moral authority? How can people cope when those they trust turn out to be different than they think? Why do we need someone to have moral authority?
You know, that is such a great question. You know, this, instead of being an inventory of the Catholic Church and what's wrong with the church, there's plenty of people talking about that right now. And I will talk about that a little bit, about what I think are some of the problems in the church itself. But I think the way we use the church, and anything, you know, it doesn't have to be church, can be really detrimental to us, because we give someone else the authority over our morality, our thinking, who we are. I mean, this is this whole society. You know, when I grew up, my mother would say things like, well, it isn't done yet. It just isn't done. So I would say, well, what do you mean? I think this is right. Well, it isn't done. So, you know, and then following that was, well, what will the neighbors think? You know, I didn't even know the neighbors. I didn't know. I never talked to the neighbors. Who cared about the neighbors? But isn't that funny? So my mother was giving moral authority to them. It isn't done. So some amorphous it didn't do it, and that meant that was the moral authority, right? Or that.
Right.
In fact, I'll tell you a secret here.
Uh-huh.
When I got married the first time, my parents did not approve of my first husband, and actually I didn't either, but I was desperate for freedom and to get out of the house, and it was a long time ago, and there didn't seem to be many other options. So anyway, I got married. I was very nervous. There was a big conflict with my husband and my parents, and so I just wanted to move up the wedding and just get out of the house and be done with it, get it finalized. And my parents said, no, we're not going to make you a wedding. So I was like, oh my God. So who cared, right? So who cared about, but anyway, so then my then mother-in-law said, well, if she doesn't make you the wedding, I'll make you the wedding. Well, see, the first thing my parents were afraid of is that if they moved up the wedding, people would think I was pregnant. See, what would the neighbors think? And so we were going to organize my life when I was going to get married to make sure that nobody thought that I was pregnant, which I was not, as it happens. I was not. And then, however, when my former mother-in-law said she would make the wedding, my parents said, no, we can't allow that. We'll make the wedding, because what will people think if she... So what I'm saying is, now the reason that I'm going through all of this drama is not just to hopefully make you laugh, and I hope it's something about this does make you laugh, but and I am sort of picking on my poor parents, but this is all true. This really is true. But it just goes to show you how we lose our own moral compass. So let's say you go to a church, the Catholic Church, for example, and it says, they say abortion's no good, homosexuality is no good, sex without procreation is no good, this is no good, that's no good, don't eat, only eat fish on Friday, which it used to be that they did this, it's like, and you're saying, okay, yes, okay, because you gave them moral authority. They told you what was right and what was wrong. And it's, again, of course, it's not just the Catholic Church.
And if you messed up, you were going to hell.
Hell. So they gave themselves moral authority, and we swallowed it. So now what happens when we discover that these people are not living up to their own, and I discovered a long time ago that priests and nuns were not all celibate and all of that kind of stuff. So I'm not talking about molesting, just not even celibate. And so, but they're torturing themselves because they're trying to reconcile who they are with what they're being told is the right thing and the correct thing, and then you get to punish yourself. So it does come down to the issue of why do we give anybody moral authority? And they will always disappoint us because it turns out they're human. Oh my God. And sometimes, very often, what they're telling us to do isn't right anyway. So, what we could be doing is looking at this whole thing and saying, well, what are we learning about ourselves through all of this? Why would all these people be covering up all of these sexual scandals? Well, guess why? Obviously, because they have to protect the integrity of the church. We have to protect the church, just like my mother needed to protect the integrity of our family's reputation that their daughter was not pregnant. And, this was a long time ago. Now, Sarah Palin had a pregnant daughter out of wedlock, but that was okay, because that's so many years later. But, whatever the thing is of the time, right? So what we do is we protect the institutions, but we hurt the individuals, the people. We're not taking into consideration people's real needs. So why do we need to have someone in authority anyway? Well, it's because we're so too darn scared that we're going to make a mistake. So it's like I say, oh, well, Granny Rock says all the answers, so I'm going to ask her. If she tells me something, then it must be true. But see, that's different because it is true. If I say it, it's true. So it's our fear, guys.
You can choose to take it or not, take it or leave it.
Exactly. Right? You have to look at it. Is it true? Does it seem true to me, right? But, you're brought up, you're indoctrinated. You're told that these people know what they're talking about. You know that it's not true. You feel it in your bones, that the preacher is having an affair with Millie in the front row, but you're supposed to not notice that. I'm talking about in other religions, right? And yet we are so scared to have to think, to have to make decisions ourselves, that we just allow ourselves to be brainwashed. We're brainwashed about everything. Capitalism is the only way to go. Only way to go. America is the greatest. White people are inherently superior. I mean, what, where does it go?
A lot of bias, a lot of prejudice.
A lot of bias and a lot of prejudice that has moral authority behind it. Oh, yes. But we're afraid just to stop and say, and why exactly are we doing it this way? Does this make sense? How many of you have been at work? I'm giving a very long-winded answer. How many of you have been at work and you're sitting there and you're just rolling your eyes because you can see how stupid the system that you're engaged in is, how wasteful it is, how you're repeating steps, how you're not getting the right information, how you're being asked to document things you don't need to document, or how the boss is giving you incorrect instructions, right?
Yeah.
But we got to go with the flu. We got to let them do it because they have our paychecks, right?
Right.
So what really happens is that underneath what is supposedly moral authority is just authority. Like our parents have the authority over us and their children.
Right.
They decide whether or not it's lollipop time or whether we're going to get beat or we're going to be sent to summer camp or whatever. And so they have authority. Well, we have to learn how to cope with authority, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then if on top of that you have the church telling you, thou shalt not, and your parents are supporting that. So then you have the church and you have your parents supporting it. And before you know it, and you have the whole society that's telling you what's done and what isn't done and how you should wear your pants and what you should wear and how you should think and what you should do with your free time and who to love and all of that stuff. And by the time you're not even thinking because it's all sorted out. And we've been programmed. We have our fear that says, oh, I want someone else to have the answer. And then we're programmed to listen and to obey. And so that's why we allow someone to have moral authority over us.
So this questioner, Anonymous, the question then was, any suggestions on an alternative, how to behave, how to conduct one's life, free of that sort of stuff?
Well, before we get to that, I want to talk about the church itself.
Okay.
And, because I haven't really said anything about that, right?
Sure.
I want to say something about the church. I believe that the beliefs of the Catholic Church around human sexuality are completely bass backwards.
Bass backwards.
I mean, it's so repressive and it's so unreal and it's all about social control.
Could I insert a little historical note?
Yeah.
The Catholic Church used to allow priests to marry, have families, have children. So sex on the part of a priest was okay, healthy, fine. But then the church changed its policy. Mm-hmm. It became to realize that somehow these priests wound up having more loyalty to their families and less loyalty to the church.
Right, and they
so
called
that's
it God.
when they said,
great.
Be celibate, so that we
Exactly.
can control you more.
Same thing with women.
And that became the model for the parishioners too. Yeah, well, certainly the priests and the nuns.
That's right.
Repress your sexuality.
Yes, that's a very, very good point. And the same thing is there's evidence that women were priests at one time.
Yes.
So these are all human concepts. And then we try to stick people into that. And people don't fit. It doesn't fit.
Right.
We create a picture. It's like saying, okay, women's waists are supposed to be 18 inches wide, which is what I learned when I was growing up, right? And then if you were anything beyond that, you were a fat slob, which even though I was tiny, my waist was more than that. I thought, oh my God, what's wrong with me? And so then you try to fit yourself into something like they did with the corsets, and they would take women's ribs out of their bodies in order to fit into the corsets. That's what we're doing, guys. We are corseting our sexuality, our humanity, and we're calling it holy. And then you wonder why these people are so screwed up. That's what I want to say. So while, yes, I mean, I think there's horrible abuse and there's a lot of pain and there needs to be some accountability, but also why don't we look at the institutions and find out why there is so much and look at changing the structure to fit humanity instead of doing what is convenient for the institution. Okay.
Perfect.
That was supposed to be a quick answer.
Well, that was great.
Okay.
Next question is from Sweet baby James himself.
He snuck it in.
I had to wait a while for my question to finally come up in the queue. So anyway, on a previous show, you answered the question, what is spirituality and how do I live a spiritual life? I'm sorry, but I didn't hear a reference to living a life guided by a higher consciousness, which you have spoken about before. Wouldn't spirituality include this? And what if a person has difficulty accessing higher consciousness? Any advice?
Wouldn't spirituality include higher consciousness?
Yeah, and living a guided life.
Right.
You referenced other things.
Right. So what I would like to acknowledge, first of all, is that we all live guided lives. The question is, what is guiding our lives? Not whether or not our lives are guided. I've just been talking about how we lead a life that is guided by prejudice, ignorance, bad authority, and that is leading our lives. But of course, that's not exactly what you meant.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But we have higher consciousness,
yes.
We have fear, we have ego. What is going to be guiding our lives? That is the question, not whether or not we lead a guided life.
Right.
The question is, what is going to guide our lives?
Right. Mm-hmm. And so this is a question about higher consciousness. And how is it possible for ordinary people to connect to what we refer to as higher consciousness? Or intuition.
Okay. Well, let's go back to the question of what does it mean to have your life guided by fear, and what does it mean to be guided by higher consciousness?
Well, I think most people, everybody, to a certain extent, has their lives guided by fear.
That is absolutely true.
Yeah.
See, what are the neighbors think? We were laughing about that. Am I going to go to hell? But am I going to lose my job? Am I going to lose love? Am I going to look bad? Am I going to starve? Am I going to lose my income? Am I going to die in my old age in a rotten situation where I have bed sores and nobody's taking care of me? We are very afraid, and we are typically guided by fear. So we think we're making a rational decision because people think they're making rational decisions, but they're not making rational decisions. They're making fear-based decisions that they are rationalizing. Right? It's like,
I know that one.
Those illegal immigrants are going to rape and kill me. I mean, the fact that, a person is possibly murdered by a non-native person, an undocumented person, then their story is splashed everywhere. Oh my God! Of course, are there 25 stories about the 400 people who were killed that same day by natural-born citizens? I mean, come on. So what we find is that we're guided by fear, and fear is used, just like in the question about the Catholic Church, where, you're going to go to hell, or whatever is going to happen to you, and blah, 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 blah. So we're all really, we don't even know it. It's like, I'm afraid of that. I'm going to afraid if I go to that party, nobody will talk to me. So I'm going to tell myself that I don't want to go. Right? Or all kinds of little things. I'm not going to speak about this. So I'm going to say, I'm not going to talk about that because it's so unnecessary. But really, it's because I'm afraid I'm going to lose my job or my friends or whatever it is. So most of us are guided by fear. Or ego, or which is all about me, how do I take care of myself? But when we talk about higher consciousness, then, because this is your question, so I'm talking to you, what we really mean is, are we thinking in the long run? Are we thinking from a higher perspective? Are we looking at all the options? Are we concerned about what is for the highest good of all, including me? And that's how I think of higher consciousness. It's like from a higher perspective. It's like, I'm the eagle. I'm looking down and I'm saying, oh my God. It's like, did you see those pictures of all the fires on the planet today? It's like staggering. Now you wouldn't know it. If you're sitting in a place where there's no fire, you say, fire? What fire? There's no fire. No fire, But if you're sitting in the middle of a forest fire, there's a fire. But if you take the broad picture and you see, my God, fires in Africa, fires in Brazil, fires in the US, fires in Canada, fires everywhere. It's just absolutely staggering. And when you look at that, you have to say, well, why? Well, obviously, global warming, right? We have more fires. Plus, there's other issues that impinge upon that. But my point is that when you take that bigger perspective, you are going to see the whole. And when you really get the bigger perspective, for instance, let's say you're in the fossil fuel industry and all you want is your house in Beverly Hills, right? Because that's been your dream all your life. So you don't care that you may be polluting somewhere because you want your house in Beverly Hills and you're going to get it, right? However, when you get there, you're because there's smog from the very automobiles with their gasoline engines that you're producing. So if you take the bigger perspective, then you're saying, well, maybe this really isn't so good for me because it really means that I'm going to be gasping for breath and my children are going to, I have an aphorism. I wrote a book called God's Little Aphorisms. Where is it? Right over there.
Right over here.
Anyway, God's little aphorism. And one of the aphorisms is, you cannot clean the air over one house in Los Angeles. And that means that no matter who you are, you're going to be impacted by how you impact the whole. So higher consciousness means we're looking at things from a higher perspective.
And does that include the intuition?
That includes intuition, but is not limited to intuition.
Uh-huh.
Some of it is just self-honesty. So intuition is only a part of that. So now I can go back to your question about, can ordinary people have this? Because anybody can think more broadly if they are willing to and really want to. I mean, one of the things you have to want is to be educated. If you like being lied to and you like prejudice and you enjoy getting all riled up, well, look no further. It's all over. But if you really want to be guided by higher consciousness instead of fear and anger and all that negativity, then any ordinary person, can study, can learn, but you have to be willing to open your mind. You have to be willing to say, well, maybe everything that I've been taught is not right. Maybe they're lying to themselves. Maybe they're lying to me. So educate yourself and learn to think globally. Think about who is going to be impacted by this. How many people, how many animals, how many plants and trees, how many different, institutions. Okay, what is the impact of this? And think about it and be conscious. And that is the beginning. Now, it is true that there are people like me who somehow got a gift. I don't know how. It happened to me. And one day, basically, I became psychic. Well, psychic in the sense that if I have you as a client, I'm going to sit here and I'm going to go, you were 2 days old and something happened to you. Or I feel what you're feeling. It's really, I'm a super empath. I feel everything and it sucks. But anyway, there it is. But the point is that while, so I have that. That's an extra sense that I can use because it helps me to really go inside and connect to the whole and really feel things that maybe it's not easy for you to feel because I'm getting that intuitive guidance. But whoever you are, you can make the choice of having higher consciousness by being willing to go past the egoic view of the world, which is all about I, and look at the whole.
Okay, then. Thank you.
Not the answer you were looking for, I bet.
Well,
I have one dissatisfied customer. Okay, let's go.
Okay.
Oh, my God.
Next one
Time
from
is
Buggy. Someone I dearly care about talks about how she has extremely low self-esteem, as if there is no hope for improving it. She talks about her childhood with examples like being the last one her age to learn to ride a bike, the worst roller skater in her class as a kid, the one who took longer to learn to read and couldn't do math, fewest friends, and so on. As an adult, she talks about being too intense and not humorous enough for people to like her. I've talked to her about perception not being truth, but I am wondering what other ideas you have to help, perhaps. Thank you, Buggy.
Hello, Buggy. We had a question from you before. So glad that you have written to us again. Well, first of all, you were describing me, except that I was very good at reading, and I can be funny. But other than that, you're talking about me. But I also was the shortest child. But anyway, I think the first thing that strikes me, Buggy, as I bet you haven't thought about this woman says nobody likes her, right? But you say you deeply care about her, right?
Right.
Doesn't that piss you off? I mean, what are you, liverwurst? I mean, don't you count? So isn't that interesting? Have you told this woman that you really care about her? And woman, did she say it was a woman? Anyway, whatever. Woman, man.
It's a her.
It is a her. Okay. So have you said, that makes me feel like liverwurst. But I'm a person who cares deeply about you, but I don't count. Who is it that you cares about you? And why do you care more about them than you do about me?
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. Well, here's another question. So are you suggesting that Buggy shift the conversation to how her friend is impacting her?
Yes. Mm-hmm. I'm saying that you tell her that it's really upsetting you. And let her start thinking about something other than herself. Okay. It sounds like she is super, super absorbed. Mm-hmm. How do I look? People don't like me, and so on. And therefore, she's not really thinking about her impact on others. Now, This, by the way, is just this, the tip of the iceberg of you saying, how you feel. But it opens up a conversation for her to start thinking about, well, why is that, right? Mm-hmm. Why am I not paying attention? And then she can go ahead and she can, and you can help her with this, right? This is where I think you can really help her, not only by pointing out to her how she's impacting you, but then by saying, well, what good qualities do you have? What you can ask me what I like about you, right?
That's a good one.
And do you see those qualities in yourself? And why don't you value them? Where is the self-value? What are you looking for? So the first thing is you're looking at the fact that she's not taking in the fact that there are people who like her, because I would bet you, Buggy, that you are not the only one who likes this woman, right? So she can, look at not the impact she's having on you with her down thing about, because it really makes you feel bad. Mm-hmm. But also look at what quality she has that she thinks are good, and does anybody else like her, and start changing the focus of the conversation.
Mm-hmm. Very good. Great. Yeah. Next question is from Anonymous. I am seriously overweight and believe I have a food addiction, but I can't just stop eating in the same way an alcoholic can stop drinking. People judge me based on my looks a lot, and I hate it. When I'm not looking at myself, I feel so different. But then I catch a glimpse and I barely recognize myself because my outside doesn't match my inside at all. How may I reconcile those two things?
Well, first of all, I have to tell you that if you think it's bad now, wait till you get old. I mean, my outside does not in any way even remotely resemble my inside. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's true for a lot of people. But the first thing I want to say is congratulations, you've noticed that you have an addiction, right?
Yes.
So you have an addiction, so you're talking about how you look and how people are judging you, but why aren't you? First question is, what are you going to do about your addiction? You know what I mean? It seems like you've asked a question, which is a good question, but the first question is, what are you going to do about your addiction? And there are plenty of places to go for food addiction. I'm not saying it's easy. It's never easy, to deal with an addiction. But the first thing is, do you care about yourself enough in order to deal with your addiction? Now, there's organizations like Overeaters Anonymous, and there's Food Addicts Anonymous, and who knows how many other programs there are for eating disorders. So instead of trying to reconcile your inside with your outside, why don't you try to do something about your addiction? And so you don't have so
Right.
much trouble. So they actually do reconcile because they are more similar. And sometimes you can be working really hard on an addiction, especially a food addiction, and you actually stop overeating. But it sounds like you are overeating. And you still don't lose weight. Well, I don't care, but then you at least have the self-love to know that you're not giving into your addiction anymore and that you're supporting your health. So that's the first thing is I recommend that you take care of your addiction, girl. And then Buggy is a girl, I'm sure. Because I think she was the last time she asked a question.
Well, this one's anonymous.
Oh,
This one's
I have
anonymous.
mixed up a Buggy with Anonymous. I apologize, Buggy. I have turned this Anonymous. I don't know if you're a man or a woman. So anyway,
But an addiction is an addiction.
an addiction is an addiction, needs to be dealt with. Now, the second part of that is about how to reconcile my inside. Well, okay, this is very good because we all need to learn to live from the inside instead of from the outside. How do I feel? So what I suggest to you is while you are working on confronting your addiction and having enough self-love to do that, right, that you simultaneously start to refocus on, don't look in the mirror. I think even if you're dealing with your addiction, don't look in the mirror. Don't weigh, don't measure. Just start up the program that helps you to overcome, the emotional eating and will allow you to eat healthy out of your own self-love, right?
Yes.
But then on top of that, live from the inside. How do you feel? How do I feel today? What do I need today? Where am I coming from today? And it's like you center, you go into your own self. And when you walk out that door and you're going to be in public, you are so connected to whom you are. No, you are connected to who you are.
Yeah.
And you come from that. So who is going to be speaking is that. Now, how do I know how to do that? Because I do it all the time, Anonymous. Why do I say that? Because I'm very disabled. If you were to watch me stand up and try to walk around the room, you'd say, oh, that poor crippled old lady, she really can't do anything right. But when I'm talking to you, I'm not paying any attention to that. I'm paying attention to me and you and what's going on between us. I'm focused on something else. I'm coming from my insides to you. I'm connecting to you. So I don't have any room in my psyche to worry about how I look because I'm too busy being who I am. Are we out of time?
We are now out of time, yes.
No. Oh, no.
Yes, we are.
I thought I was going to do 5 questions today, but I only
we did 4.
4. I'm sorry.
4.
So I hope you understand what I'm saying, Anonymous. Come from yourself, focus on what you're doing, and don't even worry about reconciling because you're not thinking about it. All about self-love, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay.
Very much. Well, looking ahead to next week, we have other questions coming up. Now, 3 of those questions already have to do with relationships.
Oh, do they?
Like how can we heal these patterns that have been coming up for these people, like issues of self-love, of not having an enduring kind of love, having dysfunctions that get in the way. Those kinds of things are going to be addressed, as well as somebody who asked a question about how do I get back my art? The art has been buried. They want to resurrect it. Any suggestions to help with that? So we all have creative outlets that we would like to have, and how do we liberate that?
Yeah. Well, I think, in glancing through, I saw there was some questions about, very much in line with your talking about someone who's has a mate who is unfaithful, someone whose partner is bipolar. There's some really intense questions coming up, and I will do the best I can to answer them, as many of them as I can next week. And as I say, please, if you look at the post, there's a link for you to send your questions to Granny Rocks. Get them in as soon as you get them in.
Yes.
You see, the sooner they're in, the sooner that I can get to them. And also tonight, 15 minutes after this live show, we have Granny's Kitchen, where we sit around and we talk about the topics that were discussed today. And I bet you would have a lot to say. So you're invited. Please come. You can do it via the internet. That's best. You can video conference, or you can call in to that video conference on the phone. So if you don't have the internet, you can still do that. So I
Yes.
invite you to Granny's Kitchen, and
Yeah.
thank you for coming and listening, and thank you for sending in your questions and being so real. And I really appreciate deeply the vulnerability of the people who send their questions
Yes.
to me, and I hope that I'm helping you.
Wonderful. Okay. Bye-bye for now.
Bye-bye.